What's going on, y'all? It's TG3 here, back again with another Phenomenal Fatherhood Friday episode. Got another guest in the building. This is Bob. He's an expert in wealth management. How do I pronounce your last name? Is it
Jacinto,
Jacinto?
like Jose. The J is like in Jose.
Okay, great. I thought I was saying it completely different, so I'm glad I asked. But we got a lot of good conversation lined up for you guys today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll jump right in. So we'll start with, you introducing yourself and letting the people know who you are.
Okay, sure. My name is Bob Jacinto. I'm a new resident to the Woodlands area. Moved here in January of 2022 from the Bay Area, and came here because my grandchildren were here. The previous resident of Texas, but love this area. Love being part of the community, and just happy to meet folks like Tillman and others. In a previous life, I used to be a Chevrolet dealer, and I've gone through different incarnations within the car business, consulting, and then recently getting into financial services to help middle-class folks like those folks who worked for me at the car dealership, help them secure their futures.
Love it. Love it. How many grandkids you got?
2, 7 and 6,
Okay.
Cassie and Callie.
All right. So if you do a Phenomenal Fatherhood Friday episode, is a tradition that you start with your most recent proud dad moment?
Most recent proud dad moment. Well, it's my daughter. My daughter, actually my stepdaughter, and she's gone through some restructuring of her family, and she took on the financial challenge, the moving challenge, the stability of the children challenge, and did it all on her own. Went through a lot of emotional turmoil, but stood on her own 2 feet, and really made us very proud and herself proud.
Hmm. Man, that's amazing. How'd that make you feel?
Really good. Because I'm her stepdad, we started off with a little different. It was more of an adult relationship, so she would kind of just ask me questions without that. I think the relationship of having grown up as an infant with me, and she would just like talk to me almost like a friend.
Hmm.
So, and then it grew into she finally asked permission. Can I just call you dad? And that was very, very, very heartwarming. But I'm very proud of her and what she's done, and we have a great relationship. The granddaughters are my granddaughters. It's fantastic.
I
The
love
most
that.
rewarding thing I've got going on. My wife and Lauren and the 2 girls.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I really wanted to touch on that because I have a stepdaughter as well. How old was your stepdaughter when y'all
19,
19? What? So that's
19.
like that rebellious stage,
Oh
like
yeah, so I just kind of had to watch from a distance and just be there. But you had to understand and learn. What's the relationship between the mom and the daughter, and
mm.
and where am I going to fit in, and then where am I not going to fit in? And the number one was I wasn't going to be a referee.
Mm.
So I had to we all had to
Mm.
negotiate that, don't, no, you got your own relationship and I'm an addition to it. And I don't have a striped shirt. I'm not your referee.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. So I know a lot of dads that walk into the situation of being a stepdad, and one of the biggest concerns they have is like walking that fine line between like, where do I step in? When do I step in? Can you speak on that a little bit, especially with a 19-year-old coming into that situation? Like, what was that like for you, and how did you manage it?
Well, we got to know each other over time. At first, when our mother and I were seeing each other, but we all got pretty close in the beginning. And she actually worked for me at the dealership early on. So
Okay.
I put her in charge of creating an internet sales department for me, and she just a very high achiever, very, very smart person, and trying to get her integrated. And that's a real challenge when if anybody here has a family business, that's a lot to negotiate when it's a family and a family member that you hope will maybe one day inherit the business, but you got to treat them just like any other employee.
Mm.
Although that you can't treat them like another employee because her fellow employees are looking at her as expecting her to be favored.
Mhm.
And, the kids sometimes, they come in and they can feel a little entitled because, this is my family business.
Mhm.
And so the challenge is being comfortable enough to draw the line. And when it's time to speak to your child as an employee, speak them to 'em just like an employee. Treat
Mm.
them no different. And it's very, very difficult sometimes for the kids to understand that. You know, why are you talking to me like that? Because it's business now.
Mhm.
You know, we're related, but then now it's business. You have this position and I own the joint. Here's what's happening.
Mhm. Yeah, I could definitely see that. So talk about, like, a little bit more about, what it looks like to talk to the mom, like, having those conversations, like, if there's anything going on between you and your stepdaughter, like, how did you approach mom and say, "Hey, let's sit down and have this conversation because it's not your daughter, but I just wanna talk to you about some of the things that I'm seeing or sensing." Like, how did you approach those type of situations that may be a little bit difficult for a lot of dads out there?
Well, I think you have to read the relationship between the two of them first and know
Mm,
where those sensitivities are. And there's some things you just probably shouldn't touch. You know, if it's an area of conflict, a topic of conflict, it's pretty, it has history to it. Don't get in the middle of things that have a lot of history to it. But the things that are fresh that you could offer input, offer that input I offered input to her mother. What do you think about that? But You know, y I think you do have to tread, but you have to just be a partner with, your wife and help her be a better mom with better information, and then just be a sounding board for, your daughter, but in the end, just send them back to each other. Don't let them
mm.
just come here and, "Okay, yeah, it's okay to, dump your feelings on me, but if you want a resolution of the problem, you're looking at the wrong person. It's between you and your mother. Now you have sense of what's going on. You are a little more calm. Now go back to your mother or go back to Lauren and you know resolve it, and then just give it time. Families are families, and the journey is a lifetime. So don't expect everything to be resolved just because as men we can see the resolution. We know the logic of the resolution. We provide then the resolution to the 2 individuals, and then they don't follow it, and then that's fine. You gave your input, step away.
I love that. Yeah, because sometimes you can see the resolution clear as day, but that doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So anyway, my main takeaway from what you just said is like help her be a better mom with the information and the insight that's given. Because it's always good to have a second set of eyes on things, whether it's parenting or whether it's financial literacy, whether it's your financials, which I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of touch on that a little bit.
I'd like to put in one I talked about being a better mom.
Yeah.
Also, coach my stepdaughter how to be a better daughter. Give her some
Okay.
perspective on her mom, and, she's young, she's learning, and we all know the historic definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results.
Yeah.
Well, I've observed you too in this type of dynamic a number of times now. I think maybe switch gears. You might want to switch tactics, try to approach your mother a different way, and then give her some options, and it's up to her then. But you know,
That's gold.
it's more than a coach or give information to my wife. So it's just really information for her to decide what to do with it. But the coaching is it was with my stepdaughter. How she's a young adult, and mother-daughter relationships can often be uh, conflicting. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And to give her some tools or some coaching on most of the time, what's missing is patience and acceptance. You look at things differently, and show some patience and some love because that's your mother. And you just disagree for now, and at this moment you live under our roof, so when she makes the call, that's the call.
Mm.
Respect it. And when you have your own kids, you're going to expect the same.
And now she has 2 kids.
Now she has 2 kids, and when she makes the call, that's the call.
Yeah. Patience and acceptance. Well, I think that changed the perspective of a lot of fathers out there. Before we switch gears to the financial side, talk to me real quick about being a stepdad. For me, being a stepdad, I feel like the most rewarding thing that I've seen so far is like being able to fill that gap and just having that influence as a stepdad and being able to come into that role where it might be something that mom might not have seen or anybody else might not have seen but you, and to be able to influence that child in a positive way. So can you speak on that a little bit as far as like you coming in at 19, she
Mm.
now has 2 kids, like what's been the most rewarding part of your stepdad journey?
Well, the most rewarding thing for me as a stepdad is I didn't raise her from an infant. I met her as a young adult, and as our relationship grew and got closer, when she asked me if it was okay to call me dad, and then when she looked at me in the eye and told me she loved me, that was it. That was the most overwhelming and rewarding thing. And then from that, having the granddaughters. I mean, again, not having raised her from a child and not experienced that because I don't have any other children, not experienced it at all. And to have a young person, another person that you're, trying to guide, be responsible for, prepare for life, and you've only known them a year or so or two, and then
Mm.
they ask you, "May I call you dad?" And then they tell you eyeball to eyeball that they love you. I mean, I kind of gets me all fluttered right now
Yeah.
because it was just that was a very, very big deal. And even now when she does that, and then when she says, as an adult, she said, "I appreciate, your patience. Sometimes, things get kind of crazy, and you're there, and I know she keeps her words moderated. So what she left out was, "You don't often blow your stack." I appreciate that, you know. But I
Yeah.
think that because I refrain from, I just try to listen and counsel and coach a little bit, and try not to get too emotionally involved or get too heated up. So when I do should raise my voice or should just walk away and I don't want to listen to you anymore, it's very, very impactful because it's, 5% of the time. So it's very unusual that, I would get, demonstrative and or show disapproval or anything like that. So um, I found it's been effective because it's so infrequent that when she comes, it is impactful to her because it throws her off.
Mhm.
And then she comes back, it's like when I was growing up, my dad was, he had a very, very hot temper. He's a very hot tempered dad. And what I remember most was I was 17 years old. And instead of screaming at me, he looked me in the eye and he said, "I'm so disappointed." And then he walked away. He never spoke to me like that. And those words, because it wasn't all the time, all the time, all the time. I mean, I remember it today. I still talk about it today, and that was 50 years ago, and I still talk about it. And so, uh, I'd say to, all the dads, and I think everybody realizes it, but our words matter.
Mm.
Our words as dads matter. We are, role models. We are models of authority, and, uh, they're listening to everything we say. They see everything we do, and so, uh in the moment, it's hard to be strategic and tactical about your behavior, but you always have to remember you're being watched. And what they see of you, that's what men do. This is what good men do. This is what bad men do. And you don't know how it's going to play out.
Mm.
So just know that you're imprinting your behavior as a dad, your behavior as a father, that's imprinted on that child. You have spoken glowingly about your relationship with your father.
Mhm.
And that started when you were this big. And there was a consistency there. So you have a model that you follow. So that's a great example. You gotta realize that at all times. You can't be perfect, and you're not expected to be perfect, but you're always being watched.
Amen to that. Yeah, I think that, me personally, one thing that my dad, he was very rarely rose his voice, which
Mhm.
I think is something that, I'm glad you shared that because that's something I've been actively working on. I tend to be a very passionate person, and I actively had to work over the years to kind of tone down that delivery. Literally just had a conversation about this last night with my kids. And I was like, look, I'm actively working on this. So you guys show me that you can still do what you need to do without me having to raise my voice. I'm trying to deliver this in the most platonic,
Mhm.
um, non-raised voice way. But real quick, you said something earlier I want to circle back to. Like, do you feel like the delivery of that, with the patience, the smaller, like not having your raised voice, having a lower tone, do you feel like that delivery is more impactful than just the rage that so many men out there tend to just lean on?
Uh, Yeah, I think so because kids are smart and they're going to play their parents
Mm,
and they understand and they'll strategize around that anger. They'll figure it out. They'll learn how to cower. They'll learn how to behave. And then they're just acting. They're just playing because, okay, this is what we do to stay clear of the heat is behave this way because stay clear of the heat. And that's the result is their behavior. It's like Pavlov. That's what you taught them, how to jump out the window to avoid the heat. But did they really learn the lesson of that you were trying to teach them, or they just were reinforced how to avoid heat? So you really got to think about that. You got to think about that. 'Cause they'll quiet down and behave or do whatever they know is going to, calm you down. But did you really impact their thinking or change their behavior for the future, or did they just learn one more time how to work you?
mm. Woo! These kids are smarter than they look,
Oh,
man.
they're tremendously smart. I mean, they're just, and that's the joy of them. My grandchildren. I see they are so smart. They're so insightful, but they do. They hear everything, and we are imperfect people, but we have to do our best to know that we're always modeling for them what their perceptions are going to be of adults, a mom or a dad, and just know that. And we're all going to make mistakes, but they're going to see that too. Did
Mhm.
dad own up to his mistake? How did he handle a mistake? If he's telling me to behave this way when at school or something and I have a failure and he's telling me to do one thing, but I've never seen him do that.
Mhm.
So, I guess that's how a family grows together. That's the lesson, of being a dad that we're learning. That's how we're growing as individuals, as humans, by these little people, challenging us with all these new situations. And we have to grow. We have to be bigger. We have to be stronger. We have to be better men because they're watching and they're dependent on us, and we are imprinting all this on their minds. So I think that now that I'm having the experience with a stepdaughter, and now with grandchildren, I'm more aware of that, and the kids are both different. I
Yep.
get the attention of one way, and get the attention of the other one the other way. And the more feisty one has been a challenge. I had to try out different, responses to say, "Look, when you're with grandpa, this is what's allowed. You're not in your house, you're in our house.
Mhm.
These are the rules in our house." And and, they get away with a ton. They get away with a ton. We spoil them rotten, this, that, and the other. But if you get out of line and don't follow the rules, uh, it all stops, you know? And hopefully, she's learning that lesson, that, when you cross that line, this is how life works with some people.
Mhm.
When they'll tell you what the line is, and when you cross it, you're not gonna like it, but now you know. Don't do that again because 99% of the time it's fun and games, and that was all on me because he told me where the line was and I ignored it
And blatantly crossed it.
and
Yeah.
blatantly cross it, and he didn't stand for it.
But it also shows a lot of structure.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
love
that
that.
just look here, every situation you're in has structure, has rules, has uh, structure and rules, and learn that when you get in a new situation, and hopefully, the kids are learning that as they go from home to us to their other grandparents. They're seeing all these different models, and
Mm,
hopefully they're very, very smart, 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 smart kids. So I think they're getting it.
I agree. So let's shift gears a little bit to, what caused you to be in the business you're in now? Like, what's your why?
Well, my why is, as I said, I used to be a Chevrolet dealer, and my career objective, and I was really absorbed. In any career, you have to really, really commit yourself. But
Hmm.
in that particular industry, and if you get to the either a general manager or a dealer, you're working endless, endless hours,
Bell to
and your
bell.
and your mind is always, always, always on the business. And every dealer I met had a pretty big ego. They weren't loud and obnoxious necessarily, but they all had big egos. You can be very subdued and calm and still have a giant ego. So car dealers, kind of think like we're the kings of industry. So my strategy at the time was to grow this small dealership that I was able to buy, that I put every penny I had in the world. I had no assets whatsoever other than what I put in this car dealership. Grow it, make a little bit of money, then buy a bigger dealership and eventually end up in Metro San Antonio, just grow that direction. Well, life can be very random. We don't have control over life. God has a plan for our lives, and we were given gifts and tools to do the best we can. So that was my plan for my business.
Mhm.
So I sold that dealership, made a little bit of money, ready to go look for the next one. And 21 days later, my wife had a stroke.
Mm.
It was very, very serious. And she, she survived, she recovered. But there was a lot of medical expense for, uncovered procedures. And 7 years later, she had a second stroke that required an emergency craniotomy to remove a tennis-sized ball hematoma from her left temporal lobe. And that all occurred, and I got all that news within a 12-hour period. She had a stroke. I knew what it was when she called me, so I called EMS and described her symptoms. And then 12 hours later, they told me, well, we're going to have to operate and open up her head and drain. In the old days, it's the joke is press down hard. There's 3 copies. I had to make that decision over my wife's life in 5 minutes, talking to a stranger. There's no time for second opinion. I just had to trust that, God put us in this hospital, in front of these doctors, and the best I can do is put my heart and soul and everything behind them and, and have faith that this is what God wanted and whatever happened, happened. And so because of all the financial hardships we went through with the previous illnesses, I had to leave her bedside and go back to work after 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks off, and I had to go back because we needed cash flow. So I needed to go back to work, and so I left her bedside, and she was unconscious.
Mhm.
And I had to leave her there in a neuro ICU with every tube imaginable, coming out of her. When she finally did become conscious, a week or so later, her first words out of her mouth were, "Where's my husband?" I was not there. She needed me. She wanted me there. And where was I? I was back at work. So she's recovered miraculously, you know, uh, really divine intercession. She survived. Her injury was 80% fatal, and she survived and is doing very well today. But what happened in the course of those 2 illnesses is, although we had the wherewithal to buy and sell a car dealership, we're talking about millions of dollars, we almost went broke twice from the medical indebtedness, the non-insured indebtedness.
Mm.
We almost went broke twice, almost got foreclosed on twice. And one of the thoughts was left with me is, if that happened to me, what would happen to one of my employees at the car dealership? How would they would be crushed. They would be annihilated financially. So I started to look for, I said, I got to see if I can do something about that. So my partner and I started looking around for some sort of financial solution that we could bring. We thought it was our car. We first want to go to our automotive community and help them to better information, better education, so they could prepare themselves better, protect themselves better. And so I found this product and was introduced to a company and learned something I never heard of before. So I'll tell it real quickly to you. My wife and I both had $1 million term policies, death benefit only. So if we died, somebody get money. Today, there's a life insurance policy you don't have to die to use.
Mhm.
And in my wife's case, she would have been awarded up to $800,000 tax-free in one lump sum. I could have stayed at her bedside, been a on-site primary caregiver for years, and never worried about our mortgage, never worried about the future, none of that. And I only can guess at how would that changed our future. And again, I went back and said, well, how would that change so many other middle class folks' future? It's essentially a GoFundMe killer. There'd be no GoFundMe's if people had this type of protection. So that's what really got me in the business, is being able to protect people from what we went through. And, I was given the gift of financial recovery, and now I had the gift of this new knowledge, and I needed to share it with folks. And then along with that is ways to build generational wealth, all in, some of the same strategies. So it's a it's a gift of knowledge that I've been awarded with that my mission now is to share that with as many people as possible.
I love that. And I love just working with people and helping people that actually have a mission. And, as you know, like my mom passed from cancer. So if you've never been there before with a loved one, and you don't know what it's like, it's not fun. You know what I mean? And it's not something that you want to go through without protection. Can you highlight real quick? I know we're a little bit short on time, but can you highlight the product you were talking about right before we got on air, where it's like you can basically wipe out all of that, like with the
Yeah,
living benefit?
yeah. So say I had it's a type of life insurance. It's called an Index Universal Life. Our product is called Living Life Defender, and I represent the number one issuer of Index Universal Life products in the entire country. And my brokerage produces 90% of the volume. We are the experts in structuring these types of plans. So
Hmm.
there's three parts to it. You have a death benefit, which all insurance has. Now you have living benefits, which covers terminal illness, critical injury, and also Alzheimer's, which is the number one growing disease for seniors is Alzheimer's. There's no cure for it. And then thirdly, there's a cash accumulation portion that can be, if structured properly by an agent who knows what they're doing, can build to a vehicle of generational wealth. So, give you an example, an 18-year-old puts in $150 a month for 8 years and then stopped contributing for the rest of their life. They put in it from 18 to 26, they put money in, stopped. When they're 65 years old, they'll have over $1 million. They did nothing else. That's the power of this vehicle, and it can do even more. So that's just one example. So you're an entrepreneur. It's a phenomenal product I didn't know about that can help small business people
Hmm.
manage their cash and manage their cash effectively. And then one use is that we've talked about briefly is forming a family bank,
Hmm.
infinite banking so that you can borrow from your own life insurance tax free for education, to start a business, buy another home, whatever you'd like to do with it, and you just repay yourself. Um,
Well, real quick before you move on, just for like the my blue collar guys out there, the everyday workers out there that are not entrepreneurs, can you like outline a real life example of how the index would benefit them in the event that anything were to happen to them or their family, like, in a
sure.
story or something?
Okay.
Just so it can really land with them, because a lot of times we're not getting this information,
Right.
and it's like it sounds good from, overall standpoint, but when you have like a story that can like really relate to how that would affect somebody who's working at a car dealership, or like one of my cousins, he works at for like CarMax or something, doing detailing
Mhm.
cars and doesn't know anything about this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So people like that.
Okay. We actually have an agent in our organization who joined the company when he was 27 years old. He sold solar panels door to door, which it's the same as selling used cars to me. That's a hard job.
Hmm.
And he did pretty well, and he lived very modestly so he could save money up, and he read a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And the Rockefeller families were the founders of this whole family bank concept. He says, and they built their fortune and maintained their fortune using life insurance. He says, "Well, I wanna do that same thing." So he purchased one of these policies, he's 27 years old, and starts putting in, I think, $500 a month, which is the average amount that an average American puts away for retirement is $500 a month. He puts away $500 a month. Less than 2 years later, he was diagnosed with a cancerous tumor.
At 29.
At 29 years old, he was diagnosed with a cancerous tumor. Thank goodness it was operable and he recovered, but he was awarded a multi-$100,000 award from his death benefit to help him through that period where he couldn't work and to bootstrap him to continue. He was 20. Things happen. One of the most heartbreaking when you think about young guys thinking about their families, and you're starting off your careers, you have a young child. One of the most heartbreaking things I ever see on television are those St. Jude's Hospital commercials for childhood cancer. It's We have no control over this life. You and I have experienced our family. Illness can strike at any time, at any age. I know when you're a young guy, you think you're invincible, but you aren't. And one day you will have a family. And the advantage of looking at life insurance early on is that you're young and you're healthy, so you're going to pay the least amount for your life insurance. You lock that in. That's how much. If you wait 20 years to get life insurance, your premiums can triple, quadruple, and depending on your health. So you get in this early, 18, 20 years old, very modestly, something that really fits in your budget, but is structured properly so you can grow it. So I
Mhm.
can only put in $100. But you know what? My agent structured it properly so 10 years from now, I could put $1,000 a month in here and I'm ready to rock and roll. So it's flexible enough if in the hands of the correct agent to get you started on something really modest that you can handle no matter what happens, and then you can grow it as your family grows. And so that's the advice that I would say to give to young guys. Starting off the mechanics, the oil changers that were in my dealership. You
Mhm.
know, start off like you can find $100. We don't ask people to spend more money. We ask you look at your budget very, very closely and ask yourself this: am I treating these dollars like employees and their job is to grow more dollars? How much of my paycheck am I going to put toward that? 10%? Okay. I make $500 a month. I got to put $50 a week, and I got to put $50 toward growing. And you can find $50. I just went to In and Out. It was $8.
Yeah.
Okay. Four times the In and Out is $32. I'm almost there.
Mhm.
You can find it in your budget that these are things I'm doing that are for fun, but if I reallocated that money, I could make a difference in my future that I can't even estimate. And I can and my team can illustrate that for somebody and then they can see it. And the reaction is usually, wow, how is that possible? But it
Mhm.
is in fact possible.
How do you think the returns compare to a dad that's looking at a Roth IRA or a 401k?
Okay. Okay. If a 401k, the purpose of 401k was never to replace pensions. It was just another a retirement plan that was actually created by the financial industry, and it got regular people to invest in the stock market.
I thought it was just to get them to have more money to be able to invest into the stock market so they can make more money off of it. Just like how the banks have a fractional reserve and that they make money in the stock market off the money that you put into the
Mhm.
bank. That's what I thought 401k was for.
Yeah, well, that can be a purpose as well. But there's three things, a number of things I realize about, in this case, a 401k versus an index universal life policy. Number one, a 401ks, your money is exposed to both the upsides and the downsides of the market. Severe ups, severe downs. 2008, it was a 40% drop. 2022 was a 30% drop. It takes about 7 years to recover. So for 7 years, you're not making money. You're just trying to get to even. So in an
Mm.
index strategy, you participate in the upside of a market index and you're protected by a zero floor. When the market goes negative, you just go flat. You don't lose money. You just don't gain any extra interest. So when the market turns up again, you're not in recovery mode. But it's taken the people who are in the market, it's taken them about 7 years to get back where they were. So you're always up. So number one, you're protected from loss. Number two, you have tax-free access to your money. When you have 401k, you can't touch your money without huge penalties to your 59 and a half. And at 72, you're required to take money out. Okay. Number three, you're putting your money in a tax deferred account. Now we know what taxes are today, and you say we're young and we're able and we can pay. When you're 65 and you retire, you have no idea what the tax rates are going to be.
Hmm.
Most of you don't know that there was a period of time not long ago that the top tax rate in this country was 90%. So our history, we're nowhere near the highest rates. So do you want to
What?
risk that so that when you're 65 years old, you have some ailments, so you have some additional medical costs, but you want to risk having to pay 40, 50% taxes, which you don't know could happen. Okay. Uh, Next, it can't take care of you when you get sick. So an IUL can provide you with the living benefits. And lastly, you can provide yourself with a tax-free lifetime income in an IUL that you cannot do in a 401k. It's just that folks don't know this information. It's just so important. We've been limited to uh, uh, a 401k or similar is a to an IUL is a Roth account.
Mm.
But a Roth account is limited in the distributions. I mean, in the contributions. So if you want to, we won't build a family bank in a Roth. You can't put in enough money. You're capped how much
Mm.
money you can put in. So an IUL essentially is a Roth on steroids. But again, I counsel people, make sure you're talking to an experienced agent who really knows how to structure. And you can tell that by the kinds of questions they ask, that they really want to know about your life, your budget, your goals, your objectives. And you can tell they're trying to structure something for you, not just sell you a product they're going to make a lot of money off. Okay. If someone tells me they have $1,000 a month uh, that they're putting in an IRA, they've got life insurance, so on and so forth, they got $1,000 a month. My suggestion will always be, well, this is a new strategy, so why don't you just try it out with half of that? I don't want your full 1,000. I know you have 1,000 you're dedicating to something that could go into an IUL.
Mhm.
I don't want you to do that. I want you to do half and just try it out. And so again, if you meet somebody and you say you have 1,000, they go, okay, well, and then they show you off with, I have 1,000, and they start you off with something that requires 1,500. They're just trying to make money, as opposed to somebody like, well, what's your budget now? I can do 1,000. Well, I never want you to back out of this, and you can always do 1,000 if you 1,000 a month. We're going to start at 500. Okay. And then if you grow, make it structured so there's room, but we leave it up to you. So you still have that cash. And
Mhm.
that's one way you can test if this person you're working with is really thinking about your best interest and thinking about your future, or they're just trying to make a paycheck.
That's some powerful stuff. I love what you said about the guy in the solar. I can't believe at 29 that, that happened. So,
On
um,
Tillman, all the time. I have another family member. Well, tell you our story. My side of the family. Okay. My mother survived breast cancer surgery when she was 90, and she lived another 5 years.
mm,
My older sister's a two-time breast cancer survivor. Her eldest daughter, is a one-time breast cancer survivor. My youngest sister is a three-time breast cancer survivor. Who in the world would think that could happen in a family with that kind of frequency? Not just one time, but repeated times. And yet they're surviving and they're thriving, God bless. But, you know, illness and accident, for example, what we're talking about, this coverage we're talking about, also contains what's called critical injury coverage. So if you're in a car accident and you suffer burns, a coma, traumatic brain injury, and I-45, man, accidents happen every day.
yep.
Houston Methodist, right near here, is a tier 1 stroke center, and the people that go in there, there's just illness and accident. It's just when you're healthy and you're just living your life and going at it, it's of course it's not something you think about, but you have to step back and say, but the reality is, you know, thanks to God, it's never happened to you, but it could touch your family at any second, and it can be the biggest crisis. At the time you want to focus all your thoughts, prayers, and energy on the recovery of your loved one, you're worried about money. That's wrong. It's wrong that it's that way, but you can still protect yourself.
Mm, I love that. Well, we're all out of time for today. You want to leave the people with any final thoughts or, anything that you really want to share?
Um, be curious, you know, try to be proactive, be open-minded, ask a lot of questions, and do your own research. Be educated. That's what I believe is in educating people. And you know, I'll offer you and so I mentioned earlier, you have a chance to read this book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? That
Mhm.
would be it's $9.99 on Amazon. It's about 100 pages long. It's a real quick read, but it's an eye opener. Like, oh, regular people can do stuff like this, and just uh, be aware and think about your future. It's never too early, and it's not as expensive and cumbersome as you think.
Mm.
And as a dad, you know, that's what we want. We want our family, our legacy to flourish. And the last thing we want is for in my case, let's say my daughter or granddaughters to be burdened by my illness, having to take care of me and sacrificing their financial future. So by me having life insurance with living benefits, if I have a serious stroke, it's paid for. If I have a heart attack, it's paid for. I get cancer, it's paid for. They don't have to go into debt to take care of me.
Wow. I love it. There you have it. And the J is silent.
The J is an H.
Oh, Jacinto.
Yeah.
Yes. So be sure to look up my guy, Bob Jacinto. Shout out to all the stepdads out here, man. Y'all don't get enough love. I know we doing the fatherhood shout outs, but I'm a stepdad. Bob is a stepdad. Shout out to all the stepdads holding it down on this phenomenal fatherhood Friday. And we'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.